Shabbos, everyone. Today is Friday, January 24th. The lunar and solar calendars are currently aligned. So it's also the 24th of Tevet, the month of Tevet. The 24th of the month, we're approaching the end of the month, so moving towards the new moon. And so we're at 24% of a waning crescent moon. It's beautiful out this morning. Tonight, an exciting event if the skies remain clear and you're able to get out as early in the evening as you can. Up in the sky tonight will be the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. You might be able to see Saturn with the naked eye. Uranus and Neptune you would need a telescope to see, but an exciting event to have them all up in the sky at the same time. Keeping up with our Willamette River. Today, the Willamette River is flowing at 29,600 cubic feet per second. So over the weeks of January, the flow rate has steadily been going down. This week's parasha is Vaera, which is the second parasha of the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus. And there is a verse there that is very important to the Pesach Seder. So the number four occurs many times throughout the Seder. We have four questions. We have four cups of wine. We have four children. So the number four. Where do we get this number four? The Jerusalem Talmud says that we get it from this parasha, particularly this verse. So it's Exodus 6 through 7. And it says, Lachen emor livnei Yisrael, ani Adonai v'hotzeti etchem mitachat sivlot Mitzrayim, v'hitzalti etchem me'avodatam, v'ga'alti etchem b'zoroa netuya u'v'shfatim gedolim. Say to the Bnei Israel, to the children of Israel, I am Hashem. I will free you from the labors of the Egyptians, from the weight, the bondage of the Egyptians, and deliver you from slavery. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and through extraordinary chastisements. ולקחתי אתכם לי לעם והייתי לכם לאלוהים וידעתם כי אני אדוני אלוהיכם המוציא אתכם מתחת סבלות מצרים. I will take you to be my people, I will be your God, and you shall know that I, Hashem, am your God who freed you from the labors of the Egyptians. So the Jerusalem Talmud asks, Minayin la'arba akosot, where do we get this idea of the four cups from? And Rabbi Yochanan b'shem Rabbi Vanaya says, Keneged arba geulot. So first he speaks about, it refers to the four redemptions. And then he says, and then he says, Lachen emor livnei Yisrael, ani Adonai v'hotzeti etchem v'gomer, v'lakachti etchem li la'am. That's the quoting of our verse. And he notices in those two verses there are these four redemptive verbs used. So there's v'hotzeti, I will bring you out. V'hitzalti, I will rescue. V'ga'alti, I will redeem you. V'lakachti, I will take you. So from these four verbs, we get four cups of wine. Eliezer Melamed, a contemporary Israeli scholar, says the sages instituted drinking four cups of wine on the Seder night in order to increase the joy of redemption and give expression to our freedom. He notes that on every Yom Tov, every holiday, there is a mitzvah to rejoice by drinking wine. But for Pesach, the sages further integrated four cups of wine into the Seder so that our joy finds expression in each of those phases of redemption. So the Kiddush is recited over the first cup. The sanctification of the day is recited over the first cup. And therefore everyone's cup is filled before Kiddush. The story of the Exodus and the first part of what we call the Hallel are recited over the second cup. which is therefore filled just before the telling of the story has begun. Birkat Hamazon, the blessing said after the meal, is recited over the third cup. And then we refill our glasses prior to its recitation and drink the wine right after. And then finally we pour the fourth cup and we recite the second part of the Hallel, the great Hallel, and thus every recitation at the Seder, every one of these four stages at the Seder is recited over wine. The Haggadah says, "B'chol dor vador chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim." In every generation, in other words, each one of us in every generation must see ourselves as having gone out of Mitzrayim. So, in the ritual of the Pesach Seder, the four stages of redemption are are a reenactment of a historical myth, but also it is the reenactment, it is the ritualization of our own leaving Mitzrayim, which is to say, leaving the things that the places that we are enslaved to us, and simultaneously a celebration of the freedom that we enjoy in the particular moment of the Seder. So there is a kind of personal and collective and aspirational aspect of what we mean by this process of redemption that we ceremonialize through the Seder. So each one of us is sees themselves as going out of Mitzrayim, both historically and in the current moment. As a community, we practice and experience going out of Mitzrayim through the retelling of the story. We we ritualize that story as a community, and we also um, see ourselves as coming out of Mitzrayim in this moment, in this particular year. Each one of us and collectively at the table, we are going through this process of connecting with the past, connecting with the story of the Exodus from Egypt through our ancestors, and also embodying that story in our own lives, in our own community this year at that specific time at the Seder. The four cups and the four stages of redemption also are connected to what they call the four galut, the the four exiles. So these refer to the exiles of Bavel, when many of the Israelites, many of the Jews were exiled from the southern kingdom of Judah into Babylonia. Also, the exile of Persia, the exile those actually overlapped. Babylon and Persia overlapped. We went into exile into Babylon. Persia then defeated Bavel, and the Persian king Cyrus II allowed Jews to return to the land of Egypt and rebuild, or the land of Israel and rebuild. The next two exiles are Greece and Rome. We are in many ways still living in, we really are still living in the galut of Rome. So each one of those galut, each one of those exiles corresponds to the stages of the Seder as well. So Eliezer Malamed still though as a question, but okay, but what's with four? What about it? And he says, ככלל ראוי לדעת כי המספר 4 רומז להופעה של רעיון שלם בכל העולם, שכל דבר בעולם יש לו 4 צדדים כנגד 4 רוחות, מערב ומזרח, צפון ודרום. As a rule, as a general rule, the number four alludes to the manifestation of an idea in its completeness throughout the world. For everything in the world has four sides corresponding to the 4 points of a compass. So the idea in this teaching is that four represents a whole picture, which is fascinating because humans can't see four sides at one time. Um, and that's important. That's important to hold on to. So when you have a box, when you have a building, if a person is trying to imagine a building, they can't imagine the fourth side. They can hold two sides, they can even sort of hold three sides, but you can't actually picture all four sides of the structure at the same time. This is important because, and this is the message that I'm sharing with you today about this idea of Geula and the idea of four and what it's pointing towards. So in many ways we are in this galut of Rome. We are still in the Roman galut as they refer to it, when Rome exiled Jews from the land. Um, the great diaspora began in the last 2,000 years, have been referred to as galut, even up to this day. The fourth cup of wine at the Seder happens at the end, and it is the point at which we start doing the ritual about Eliyahu. We start saying Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. We go to the door to see if Eliyahu has come. All of these phrases are aspirations, they're expressions of hope that the final redemption, the whole redemption, the wholeness of the world, where we can see all four sides at once, will happen this year, and we'll be able to live in a perfected world. That is really an aspiration. That's really something we hope for. It's sort of our North Star. We set our compass in that direction towards a time when the whole world will be whole. All of the world will be whole, but in a sense, we'll have fully four dimensions. And right now, we're sort of functioning mostly in three dimensions, if you will. So we are without an ability. We are without ability as humans to picture what that stage would look like, what it would look like to live in a whole world. And part of the reason we can't is because our minds are not capable of holding all the parts at one time. Nevertheless, we have an aspiration to get there, and that's the North Star that draws us to keep working to build a whole world. The tension between the liberation that we can experience as individuals and communities here in this moment every year at Pesach, and a geula, a redemption, an ultimate redemption that we really can't even picture. The tension is very important because we want, the ideal is that we manifest as spiritual practitioners, as Jews, a relationship, an ongoing relationship, dynamic and creative relationship between what is possible and what actually is. So we find redemption and wholeness to the extent that we can in this moment. In this moment. That's why it's so important that in every generation we see ourselves as coming out from Mitzrayim, even if it's in that moment alone of the ceremony of, of Pesach, of the Pesach Seder. That's the world as it is, to see ourselves in this moment and the Geula that we can experience in this moment. At the same time, we don't stop there. We don't we don't say, okay, we've achieved it, end of story. We hold the idea that there's a lot more work to do, a future that we can only kind of imagine, and that uh, that relationship, the tension between those, what is near and what is far, is held in our bodies as a kind of dynamic, creative process that we live with. The having the future that is beyond our imagination is meant to drive us to keep trying, to drive us to keep working on ourselves, on our communities, on our world. But at the same time, we need to understand that Geula and freedom and redemption is also possible here on micro levels, in my own person, in relational levels with people that I'm in relationship with communities, with societies. All of that is possible in moments now. It looks very different than what it might look like in the future, but all of that is possible now. When we talk about in Judaism the Olam Haba, the world to come, or in Aramaic, the Alma Da'atya, the, the world to come refers to a redeemed world that exists already in the future and that is sort of drawing us toward it. So in very literal Hebrew, Olam Haba or Alma Da'atya doesn't just mean something that's happening in the future. It means Olam Haba, the world that is coming, the world that is flowing into us right now, the world that we have little tastes of right now, the world that we can work towards um, because it is drawing us, and we get little tastes of it, so we can continually work on this, on what it means to develop ourselves and our communities and our societies, and evolve our communities and societies and selves toward this ultimate redemption. So 4 represents wholeness. We are still in the midst of one of the exiles, and we anticipate and look toward and work towards the full redemption, while also being aware of and grateful for the redemptions and the freedoms that we can enjoy in particular moments, in particular periods of time, in particular places in our lives. Shabbat Shalom.